We're going to talk about what is blockchain, what are the potentials for rights management and the creative industries and the creative economy. By way of introduction for me, a lawyer, 23 years qualified, spent 10 years of that as an in-house counsel, and the last 11 or so years at Silkin at a legal firm where I specialise in digital media. We do lots of things. We do token sales and investments in the blockchain space and handle copyright for rights-based platforms and coin-based productization, which by the end of this panel you'll know all about. For me, I really think it's incumbent to start off any chat about blockchain with a primer as to what is blockchain. Have we got any blockchain experts in the room that aren't on the panel? Anyone self-describe themselves as a blockchain expert? Good, you're in the right place. I very deliberately don't specifically expect or understand an understanding of blockchain. So I'm just going to spend 5 minutes doing the impossible, which is explaining everything you need to know about blockchain by the end of this short introduction, before we get to the meat of this, which is hearing the insights from the brilliant businesses on the panel. So what is blockchain? So this very, very intricate draft actually, you wouldn't know, but actually summarises pretty much the paradigm shifts in society. So on the left you have a sort of centralised system which very much represents the world of the past. We're in a sort of decentralised or networked world in the middle, and we're moving to what we call a distributed world, which is where blockchain really sits and where it lies. So some examples of those companies in the past would be big newspapers, governments, franchises, institutions in the past. We're in this decentralised world of the present, with the likes of Facebook and Twitter and Dropbox and Uber and Airbnb being perfect examples of this. And then we've got this huge number of blockchain startups on the right-hand side who are looking to disrupt and distribute in this distributed world. Storage, contracts, networking, anti-counterfeiting, digital identity, all of these areas that are fantastic use cases for blockchain technology. So we've used that word over and over again. It's really incumbent on me to tell you about where it all came from. Now, one of the great myths about blockchain is that it's new. It's not. It's slightly younger than your iPhone. But the first white paper in 2008, I believe, really sorts a massive issue in the digital world. So it had sort of 10 years of a digital networked world, which was how could you ever have digital payments or a digital currency in a world where you couldn't solve the double spend issue? What do I mean by that? Well, if you have a digital image that you send to someone on your phone or online, there are copies, and it can be used or spent multiple times. So the sense was there could never be a digital currency without solving the double spend issue. So in 2008, a person or persons known as Satoshi Nakamoto published a white paper which said that this problem can be solved using the power of cryptography, using insane maths and using a distributed peer-to-peer network could enable a new form of digital currency and then a whole form of new digital life and well-being. And in 2009, the first expression of this, the Bitcoin, which became Bitcoin, appeared on the blockchain protocol based on Satoshi's work. Now, what does all of that mean? Well, really, I take here a quote from that revolutionary tract known as The Economist. I think its description of blockchain technology is one of the best, really. In essence, it's a shared, trusted public ledger that everyone can inspect and no single user controls. Participants in a blockchain system collectively keep the ledger up to date, can only be amended according to strict rules, and Bitcoin's blockchain ledger prevents double spending and keeps track of transactions continuously. It's what makes possible a currency without a central bank. So it started in the world of cryptocurrencies. But this is not a cryptocurrency conference. This is a blockchain in relation to IP industries. And this is really where we're going to focus in a world beyond Bitcoin. This brilliant graph here explains to you exactly how it works in 6 easy stages. But essentially, there's a transaction. I'm starting on the top left here in a digital world. That transaction gets broadcasted to a network of nodes. So very much like peer-to-peer torrent sites, or how content gets carried on technologies like Netflix and Spotify, using a peer-to-peer network and the efficiency of that node, transacts it to a network's node. The network validates the transaction using these known algorithms, avoiding the double spend. The transaction is unified with other transactions on a block of data. Those blocks of data become associated with each other by way of a chain, getting the name here, and then the transaction is complete. And in under 9 minutes, you have what used to take banks 3 days. But remember, it starts with a financial transaction, but we are now expanding our concept in our mind of what is a transaction. And that's really what we want to get into with our panel. So, notice 2 descriptions are the same. Some call it an incorruptible digital ledger of transactions that can be programmed to record not just financial transactions, but anything of value. A network that lives in state of consensus automatically checks in with each other at the nodes every 10 minutes. Self-auditing ecosystem of digital transactions. The network reconciles every transaction that appears. These transactions are referred to as a block. Another one for the accountants in the room. I find the accountants find this description quite helpful. Picture a spreadsheet that is duplicated thousands of times across a network of computers. Then imagine that this network is designed to regularly update this spreadsheet, and you have a basic understanding of blockchain. Or blockchain technology is like the internet with a built-in robustness. By storing blocks of information that are identical across this network, the blockchain cannot be controlled by a single entity, and most importantly, has no single point of failure. This makes it inherently robust, and it makes it unhackable. So, that's blockchain in a nutshell. Really what this panel is here to explore is what it could mean for the creative industries and the creative economy. And for me, the internet, the World Wide Web, has very much been the internet of distribution. So the ability to take your content or your assets or your media or your work and distribute it in a fashion which is known in technical terms as willy-nilly. You haven't been able to track it, you haven't necessarily been able to control it, you haven't been able to monetize it without reference to these other decentralized platforms. The control and rights management has been as much of a problem for the media industry for when people started to right-click and create a perfect copy like that of any kind of digital file. And in the old days where we used to rely on analog sources of records, spreadsheets, sometimes Excel if you were lucky, as it were, we've found that metadata and rights registries in virtually every vertical have found to be wanting, leaving all of the power in the hands of the platforms who have better information about content than the people who own and create it. Also, we spend a lot of time in the IP world looking at what we call chain of title, the provenance, who owns it, who should get paid, how could this be done? By using blockchain technologies to encode that information at any point in the value chain means a huge amount of time and efficiency can be created and saved. And I come to this word of provenance, which I'm sure we'll come back to in the panel. We spend a huge amount of time working out if something is true. That's what PayPal does, that's what eBay does, that's what Airbnb does, and all of these companies we like to say are part of the sharing economy, whereas actually they don't really share a lot of the profits, and certainly not much of the margin. But the reason they need to exist is trust is really, really important, especially when you can't see someone. So in an online world, the importance of trust has only increased. And the opportunity for blockchain is what does it do in relation to trust? And for businesses that are based upon royalties, and I can't think of a media-based industry that in some way, shape or form doesn't involve the flowing back of value in some way, blockchain technologies could, at their finest, ensure that people are paid virtually instantly, rather than where we sit now, which is either late or not at all. And my final thought piece here is that we have created a world where, in a digital realm, be that people's privacy or their data or their IP, it has been made ubiquitous by these platforms. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all of the platforms have taken content and been able to disseminate it and make it ubiquitous. But actually what we've lost is scarcity. Blockchain technologies ensure that you can use the robustness of the cryptography to create a digital image and create a unique one, and blockchain technology can ensure forever that that is the one. And there are a number of people specialising, working in digital merchandising and bringing back a world of scarcity in what has been rendered and pulled into ubiquity. You're now all blockchain experts. I'm only half joking. I want to hand over to our real experts. So if you can invite Richard, Vaughan, Irina, Maria and Rajiv up to join me on the panel. Up there.
Yeah.
Great, so I'm now going to hand over to our panel to introduce themselves, to tell you a bit more about their companies and how they work with and understand blockchain technologies. I'm then going to ask a few questions. I am very deliberately going to leave some time for some questions from you as well. So please do make sure that you take an opportunity. We've pulled together here what's known as a rockstar panel. Some of these companies are in the most bleeding edge, disruptive, and in terms of the likes of IBM, in terms of scale, awesome in terms of that. So do please use this opportunity as well. These aren't just my questions. So I'm going to start with Maria, if you can introduce yourselves and tell us more about where you've come from and what your company do.
Well, hello everyone. I am Maria and this is my co-founder Irina. We have founded Big Couch and Filmchain. We started with Big Couch 4 years ago. First and foremost, we're two very good friends that go way back and have complementary set of skills. I come from a producer's background in the entertainment industry, and Irina has a background in technology and finance. Big Couch essentially was a co-financier alongside kind of the big players, the British Film Institute, Creative England, Icelandic Film Centre. We've done all sorts of films where we were establishing a new type of finance for the feature film industry. And somewhere further down the line, we've been existing for 4 years with Big Couch. We realised how complicated and almost sometimes impossible it is for investors to actually get their money back. So the whole money flow from anything from the exhibitors, from cinemas, from TV, it was taking a very, very long time to go back into the creators' pockets, or even financiers, investors, bonds, and so on. And that's when we started looking into the blockchain technology. So we have set up Filmchain, which aims to, basically it's the fintech infrastructure through which we let the money flow from exhibitors straight into the filmmakers' pockets and all the stakeholders involved. So to break it down, essentially what we do for our alpha platform is we speak to producers who come on our platform and set up their project. We're able to help them create the governance, so have all the stakeholders' interests aligned. Everyone is very clear about what they're getting and what their position is in the recoupment schedule. And then we collect from all sources of revenue, anything from cinemas, distributors, sales, and we allocate all the funds instantly on the blockchain technology to all the stakeholders involved. Most importantly, people get access to real-time information. So they what's today is taking anything from 6 months to a year to get reports over the revenues and understand how well their project is performing. And now they're getting real-time information and can also access their funds very, very quickly. So basically they get paid anything from big chunks of money to small nano payments. And this is our alpha version, which we are basically operating this year in August.
Hello everyone, I'm Irina. Just to add up a few thoughts on Maria's great description there. Filmchain was literally born from our own needs of finding a better way as co-financiers to understand the money flows in films. We sat, as Maria said, at tables alongside BFI and other big players in the industry, and realizing that probably the most important thing for independent filmmakers out there is the data behind their film projects, understanding how many views, what revenue is coming from what sources at any given time, and to allow them to be agile and to allow them to actually make better marketing and better adapt their product, their content to the market. We're very happy to say that we've been backed by the UK government, by Innovate UK, where we've supported for an 18-month research and development project by them. We're also working in collaboration with Imperial College London and their cryptocurrency research and engineering department there. Some of the smartest and great minds in the crypto space currently, they're supporting our development. We're going to dive further into part of the technology, but it's really sort of we want to set the infrastructure for a much wider ecosystem that will allow filmmakers to do much more than just sort of collect data around the royalties, trackers, and the management of their revenues.
My name is Richard Stockley. I'm from IBM. I currently run blockchain for IBM here in the UK, which is a great privilege. I'm a relative newcomer to IBM. Previous to this, I ran a digital publishing business in Asia, which gives me a very, a unique fondness for the potential that blockchain can do for the media supply chain, having spent a bit of time at the bottom of that food chain. Now I'm across both the services side of the business and the software side of the business as far as IBM. IBM, as you'd expect, we produce software. We have a lot of tooling and products associated with blockchain that helps everything from startups to large industries. And we also have our services side of the business too, where we work hand in hand with partners, building and developing and reinventing their processes, leveraging the unique properties of blockchain.
Hi, I'm Rajiv, Mathur. I come from a research background. I did research in mobile telecommunications, security, fraud detection. After my research times, I've been working as a consultant into mainstream banks in the UK and the retail banking sector. I've also been an architect, architecting new startups in telecommunications, corporate startups, as well as starting up new e-money type businesses. So I come from a retail banking, IT side of things, architecture. That's my core skill. Again, research-wise, cryptography has always been very close to my chest, and I've always enjoyed working in this. And since blockchain started, I got interested. I'm the CTO at Chainvine. Chainvine is a blockchain technology company. What we want to do and what we are already doing for some of our clients is to create a platform that allows an organization, a supply chain, or a legal unit or whoever to utilize the blockchain power without fully understanding the blockchain, because we provide them ways to interact with blockchain in industry standard ways. So they don't really need to understand how to integrate with Ethereum, or how to integrate or create a Hyperledger Fabric network, or how to transact on a colored coin, anything like that. We would give simple APIs. We have the workflow as well integrated into the platform. So basically, we are an enabler technology business a platform technology provider. That's what Chainvine is.
I'm Vaughan McKenzie from Jaak. When I was 15, I think, I went to do my work experience at my uncle's company. He worked for Sony BMG in Putney, and he worked in archiving. And he said to me, Vaughan, there's a box. Go into that box, take the lid off, take something out of there, read what's on the front. So it was a master tape. Read the label copy off the front, and then go put it into that spreadsheet on that computer. And yeah, for like my summer, it was absolutely awful. And as you can imagine, I didn't do it very well. A few years later, me and my friend, who I'd worked with for a long time, decided to build this really cool music app. You know, we love music, we love sharing music. So it's very simple. It was just, let's have a way of sharing songs with people. So there's like this channel that just runs through the world of places you can share songs, and your friends can just pick it up on whatever platform they're listening to. It's very simple, and it's called Jaak, which is Jack in. Nice and simple. And then we kind of built the prototype and went to speak to rights holders, and they were like, you can't do that. And I said, well, why? And they said, well, there's just no way to do it. And I couldn't understand why, because it seemed so simple. And then they said, well, basically, the way that we sell our licenses, the way we sell music, we have to do it in this kind of like big bulk way. So actually having someone cut through that and have a sharing bus in the middle wouldn't work. And I said, why? I said, well, because we license that way because we actually don't really know who owns what. It's very, very hard to figure out. So it's very hard to route payments around. I said, why? And I kept doing this until I kind of found this problem, which is that if you think about Spotify, you think about one song, each song basically represents a whole set of businesses, cap tables and so on. And every single time you play one of those songs, you kind of launch this payment into the wild that has to somehow reach all these stakeholders or shareholders. And no one really knows who those people are. There's no one database where all this data is. And we kind of stumbled into this world of rights and music rights and the fact that there was no actual way to get a clear picture of who owns what. Then we found out that there had actually been a project already in the music industry to try and do this. It was called the Global Repertoire Database. They were going to get everybody together and they were going to build this database, and it was going to be perfect, but it all kind of fell apart. So we started digging into that, and what we found out was that actually there's lots of problems in trying to build a data set, one data set of all the rights, where you have lots of companies or people in a network who need to collaborate on a specific data set, and you can kind of see where I'm going with this. So what we ended up realizing was that blockchain could provide a solution in helping to pull this data together and have lots of people who don't really want to trust each other to collaborate on a data set. And that was really where we got our start. After that, we having been in the blockchain space for a while, we went to one of the first Ethereum developer conferences and met our third co-founder, who is called Victor Tron. He was one of the first hires at the Ethereum Foundation and also runs Swarm, which is the decentralized storage protocol for Ethereum. And since then, we met our fourth co-founder and have built Jaak over the last, founded the company in 2015, so we've been going for a little while now. And the latest thing we did is do textiles music in the US. So we, at that time, took on funding from the members that were part of Textiles, which included Sony Music and Warner. And now currently run one of the largest music pilots, music blockchain pilots in the world. What we're now doing is kind of pushing out to a real commercial release. So theoretically, we'll be a kind of a live blockchain platform running in the music industry by the end of the year. And that's Jaak.
Great, thank you. I very deliberately wanted them all to tell you a lot more about the companies because hopefully it also explains the direction of travel on the questions. But I'm going to be the audience here, have a choric role. And I'll start with sort of Maria and Irina actually, with regard to, you talked about helping and enabling creators and rights holders to get paid, but what are those real life problems that Filmchain wants to address? I mean, you've got the top level of everyone wanting to get paid instantly, as it were, but what are those real life challenges that people are finding, and how will Filmchain address those?
So again, we have experienced a lot of these problems ourselves, so we can only basically we are looking still to speak with so many people part of this industry to validate our assumptions. But the problems we have identified, especially from the producer side, first of all, there's a lack of transparency, kind of the big word that blockchain is kind of evolving around. But it is surprising how little a content creator, a producer knows about their film once the film has been made and sold. It's absolutely incredible how little they know.
And you're a filmmaker, aren't you? Or used to be.
I used to be, yeah, then turned entrepreneur. And so there's a massive lack of data, of transparency. Secondly is accessibility. So there are two major companies in the world doing these kind of third-party, unbiased transaction management, and if they only address to kind of bigger budgets, and they have their own kind of set of fees. And then it's the wild, wild west. It's literally producers doing accountancy for 5 to 10 years and just trying to speak to whatever source of revenue that they know of. So they don't sometimes know, they don't even know where the film has been sub-licensed.
And presumably with the changes in film, you know, with sort of the decline in theatrical, more on-demand platforms, etc., one would thought that things should get easier, but I suspect you're going to tell me it's not the case, right?
It's definitely not the case, and exactly how kind of Vaughan touched upon is the same kind of rights management tracker that you still need to kind of identify kind of very key components such as ownership, like IP ownership, who owns the IP for that project, and then the rights, or who has the rights, who is the sales agent in which territory, and afterwards who's the exhibitor, and having a holistic vision upon these things that ultimately generate revenues for your film, as in you should be able, as a content creator, as a producer, to know all this information. And then we have seen such award-winning, like we're talking about Cannes, Berlin, Sundance, award-winning filmmakers that don't understand their revenues or wait 12 months or 2 years to understand the revenues, and then they don't have data on top of that. So when they go to finance their next film, they don't even know what to say. What they know is the award, which they have won, film festival, and that's what they go with. They go with an award because they still don't have a clear vision upon their wallet or data about their film.
Okay. Richard, I'm going to switch gears slightly because there's the old phrase of no one ever got fired for buying IBM, and very much implied in that statement is the idea that IBM tends to work with trusted, established technologies, and you can't go wrong. But of course, many people see blockchain as at the other end of the spectrum. You know, the wilder west, as it were. Paint a picture really about how IBM views blockchain and distributed technologies like that.
Yeah, for sure. It's great to know that my presence in my company gives job security to my customers. That's encouraging, and hopefully not the only element of value that we provide. Blockchain for us started really early. We're a technology company at heart. We love big, complicated problems, and we spend $6 billion a year on R&D alone, and that's across the board. That's everything from quantum computing to different types of spectrum analysis, and blockchain. When we first started in 2014, 2015, looking at it seriously, we looked at what was kind of forming into Ethereum. We looked at Bitcoin. We started to develop our own proprietary sort of products and fabrics and technology. And it became very clear to us in those early days that taking a proprietary approach to blockchain was just never going to work. It was the old IBM of the 70s and 80s, where we like to have our customers across a barrel with a mainframe and keep them loyal customers despite their disapproval. Blockchain, in its essence, is a team sport. You need to have broad participation across the ecosystem. So by having proprietary products that you require people to lock into wasn't going to work. So we actually open sourced a lot of our technology. And so all we provide as IBM on the top is tooling to accelerate you, whereas the base fabric is run by the one that we're working with most at the moment is run by the Linux Foundation. Also, I think we could very easily see its potential. And it sits very much at the heart of our heritage. We like big data sets. We like big, complicated problems. We like going into big companies and saying, you know what, I can apply this new technology and completely revolutionize your business. And we've done that repeatedly over the decades, and that contributes a lot to the enthusiasm and dare I say, the expectations, especially towards the end of the quarter, that my bosses have of me and our blockchain mission. And I think that's why we're behind it fully and excited. And this is across industry. So we're doing fantastic things in supply chain, working with Maersk on marine transportation. We're doing great things with food safety. These are large industry problems. And also the stuff we're doing with the media supply chain with Unilever and others, Group M. It's a fun ride. So yeah, very much sits in our heritage and a lot of investment going behind it.
Great. Rajiv, Chainvine focuses on identity, provenance, truth. These are big concepts, as I alluded to earlier, particularly in the digital realm. But could you give the audience some examples about how Chainvine is working with different types of businesses to apply it? Lots of people come to me and say, how do I get on the blockchain?
Yeah.
What does this mean for my business?
Yeah. So the value of working with Chainvine is we do not go into a business and say, hey, it's the world of blockchain. Throw away all your legacy systems. There's the bin. Give us 10 million and we'll build you a brave new system.
That's Richard's
which
job,
is
right?
No,
that's Richard. Yes.
Sadly, we don't do that at all.
That's the old one.
My shareholders aren't happy, but it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that. So Chainvine basically. So when you want to put a transaction on the blockchain, as we saw in the presentation that made you all experts on blockchain, the first thing you need is an address of some sort, something that identifies you, not in a KYC sense, but as an address. It's a string, it's something that says, okay, this is your address. It's like the house address. And then if you want to send funds to another person, you need their house address, so you send funds over to them. Now, in order to interact with a system like this, you need this address. We call this in the digital world identity. What Chainvine does effectively, depending on the use case, do a KYC or create a digital asset. So a bottle of wine, you digitize that by identifying it somehow by an IoT sensor. I don't know if anybody has seen some of our posts from last week where we demonstrated the concept of intelligent wine. Basically what we do is we digitize a physical asset with some sort of IoT, so be it a sensor. What we shown in last week is a sensor that goes on top of the bottle of wine. Now that is a digital asset that we have created, and we create that asset through our platform onto the blockchain. Once that asset is created, the platform can then track that asset. That asset could be transferred around. Its provenance can be maintained. The IoT sensor also sends data about its location, humidity, sunlight, tilt, acceleration, lots of factors. And with maintaining the provenance and quality of that commodity, we hope that you will be able to trade that commodity in somehow. So what Chainvine does is maintain the provenance of a good through the digital world of blockchain. And that is what our platform is meant to do.
And that's physical and digital.
That is physical and digital, yes. So in the case of wine, we have digitized the bottle of wine by immutably fixing a sensor on top that we identify on the blockchain. In the case of metal, we have worked with a large metal company, Stena. It's on the website as well. So in that case, we digitize a block of metal that Stena have got from one of their suppliers. And then as that steel is sold, we can maintain provenance of where that steel is. And then when it makes back into recycling, we should know. So what problems does it solve? Lots. So like in the digital industry, in the media industry, there's a problem with having data on where that asset is, or who owns that asset, or who has to be paid. In classical supply chain, we have similar problems where we can't differentiate one asset from another. So if there's counterfeit that is joined within the source, then you wouldn't know where it is. With blockchain, you are certainly going to make that process much more efficient by being able to track through a blockchain, how that asset has been traveling around and who owns that asset at any point in time. So because, as Cliff showed on that presentation, the fundamental problem that Bitcoin solved was that of double spend. What that means is you can't spend something again that you've already spent. So if I take a picture of a £10 note, and if that £10 note picture was legal tender, I could spend it again and again. With Bitcoin, even if I transfer Bitcoin by means of a picture, once that Bitcoin has been transferred, you can't spend it again because it doesn't exist anymore on that address. And this is the problem that Bitcoin solved. Applying the same thing on physical assets solves the problem of provenance and ownership, and that's what we do.
Great, thank you. Vaughan, thank you for explaining why 14 years ago you were in all of the databases of the music industries for that summit. Sorry, I'm joking. But no, a couple of things I wanted to touch on is that, the music industry has an awful habit of being one of the first to be disrupted by digital. So, but it's a difficult one to start with because unlike certain other assets, there's not one owner. You can have a publisher, you can have a recording rights owner, that can be split on a territory basis. Some of the most sophisticated or fiendishly complex stakeholders all operating in parallel at the same time. How does Jaak look to work with all of those stakeholders to actually align their interests in order for them to effectively play with your rights graph?
I think the first thing that we did was think about the many stakeholders and think about the kind of things that they hate and the things that they love. I think most companies love profit, revenue. So we built business cases that we thought they'd like, which is like, how about we find all the companies you currently can't work with and we help you find ways to work with them. And that was our kind of like, okay, that's the prize, that's what everybody wants in the music industry. Revenue's great. And then what we did is we just removed anything that was scary or risky. So do we need a public rights database? Potentially, but do we need a public rights database now? No, we don't. It doesn't solve the problem. Do we need to deploy a cryptocurrency and do global royalty payments for artists and rights holders? Maybe in the future, but do we need to do that now? No, actually, it adds more problems because it's almost impossible to pay out to a tambourine player who played something on a song and is from like very, very hard to reach market. Those things create more problems. So it's really just us removing lots of the things that people found problematic, and eventually what you find is the entire industry coalesces around one thing, which is becoming a more profitable industry. And that's really what we've tried to do, is figure out where blockchain actually helps people do that first, and then relentlessly focusing on that. And that's again why we're kind of how we've done our rollout strategy, and that's why we don't have a public chain. That's why we haven't pushed the token cell and doing any of those things. Just really focusing on what's the business case, who cares about it, who signs off, get it done, get it out, move on to the next bit.
Question: did you start with blockchain, or did you start with the business side of it in your sort of the evolution of your business?
We started with a problem, I think. We started with a problem and then realised that blockchain was a good solution for it. And that's always been how we've rolled it out. It's just people say, I've got this problem and we believe blockchain is a good solution. If blockchain wasn't a good solution, we wouldn't use blockchain.
I think that's really important because it's amazing to see so many people in here talking about a databasing system, because in essence that's exactly what it is. In 5 years' time there'll be two of you in this room, sadly, because it's very sexy at the moment, but it is essentially a databasing system that can do some kind of cool things. But once everyone knows that, it'll be like, should we use blockchain? Yeah, we'll use blockchain. So that's kind of where the evolution comes from. I think we definitely see the same thing. I'm sure shared along the panel that it means nothing unless you apply those unique properties to a business problem. And unless you have that business problem and you're solving for something there, if you start with blockchain, you'll fail because it is essentially a accounting system.
brings me beautifully on to the question to Team Filmchain. So we've talked about getting paid is a big real life problem, but what other applications of blockchain technology for the audiovisual industries are you looking to integrate into the platform going forward?
No, that's a very interesting question, and we definitely share the same vision. And I think we're looking at the music industry and drawing a lot of parallels with from companies like Jaak. At the base, the film industry is a very capital intensive industry. To make a feature film, you generally need a lot of capital. There are not probably as many stakeholders involved as in the music space, but still you'd have on a feature film sometimes 5 financiers, a bunch of sales agents, distributors, and if you actually involve the whole cast and crew, maybe sometimes 80, 90 members on top of that. The one thing that we're seeing and we're using blockchain is in this amazing distributed ledger technology is for rights management. We really sort of want to empower filmmakers to know who holds at any given point the IP for that content, where that content sits, whether it sits with a sales agent for a bunch of territories, whether it sits directly with one of the large VOD platforms in the US or so on. And this is very important. On top of that, it's also kind of tracking the revenues and making sure that the revenues, once they're being collected from different sources of collection, as I mentioned, a VOD platform, maybe a distributor, cinema chain in China, that could be a collection point. Once we kind of draw revenues from all these different sources, these revenues don't just sit on a sales agent's spreadsheet, balance sheet for 6 months' time, but they're actually allocated in a much more real-time way to everyone who participated in making that content, that film project.
And presumably as part of that permissions, there's a form of elements of content protection and anti-piracy in that as well. So you know which platforms do or don't have the rights to show the content.
Absolutely. And we often talk to producers who all of a sudden find years later that some distributor that they didn't even know about or an exhibitor managed to kind of get their content and release the content in some type of territory, and the value was never captured. And one of the assumptions that we somehow, maybe myself and Maria, we believe that films make money, and this may be controversial, but we really believe in that. Otherwise, there wouldn't be such a widespread film industry out there. The only thing is that the money is not reaching the actual film creators or sometimes the investors themselves. And it's very important to actually create mechanisms and make the film, the practices and the processes in the film business aligned with the way that we nowadays consume content. We see a lot of innovation on screen in the film industry. There's VR, AR, a lot of exciting visual effects, but the processes, the business behind film hasn't changed in decades. And trying to kind of build and work within the industry with stakeholders, with the sales agents, with the distributor, with the exhibitors, and to actually make a process that will bring some type of data to the surface, to the film producer, it's something that it's literally our mission in the industry.
Great, thank you. Richard, your role at IBM goes beyond creative industries, but goes to the sort of the wider creative economy. Could you talk to some more examples with regard to those that aren't necessarily in the creative industries?
Yeah, for sure.
Or embracing the technology?
Yeah, well, look, there's interest across industries at varying degrees. Obviously, financial services has run away with this. They're out
Despite
front.
what they say publicly, right?
They're very much behind it, which is interesting. I think a lot of that has got to do with the assets they deal with are digital in nature anyway, so that there's no sort of gap between the physical and the digital. And so a digital representation on a blockchain is just another databasing solution for them. And they're also very rational actors. You know, if they can shave off a few basis points, they'll do it. And the complexities in their ecosystems are a little less. Really interesting applications in distribution as far as supply chain. Closer to home, not so much the creative side, but still using creative content is the work that we're doing in media. So working with Unilever at the moment, just on a pilot, really interesting pilot with them, with Unilever and Group M and the Weather Company on, it started off the first stage. It's the first stage of our journey into creating transparency in the ad serve and the advertising media chain. You know, in the old days, you know, $1 spent in advertising, 85 cents of it would hit the publisher. Now it's more like 40 cents. And there's a raft of intermediaries in the middle there, you know, the demand side, supply side, aggregators, agencies, all that sort of stuff that extract that do certain things in the market at the moment. And in a blockchain sense, I like to distinguish between sort of adding durable value and non-durable value. There are a lot of actors that are not adding any durable value. They are just taking it from over here and putting it here. And they're sort of that threat from the transparency that blockchain can produce. So in order to create that transparency so the brand knows where and what is being served up to their potential customers, we're trying to link that up in a blockchain sense. And the first step is really boring. It's an invoice reconciliation. So is the brand paying for the stuff that's actually getting served up by the publisher? And we're doing it in a very confined sort of way. And we're starting with that intentionally sort of boring application in order to prove out the technology at scale.
Time intensive, people intensive,
so
profit intensive in terms of the breakage.
Where there's complicated process, where there's lots of people, or where there's paperwork. They are the three P's that me as a kind of a sales guy look at. If I find a process that has those things attached to it, I'm like, okay, there might be something blockchain related here. Because it is all about creating inefficiencies. There's exceptions that need an army of people to reconcile pieces of paper and fax it over to this and call up, you know, did that ad hit that? I don't know. That takes time and it costs money. So that start is definitely the place to start. And there's I can't say too much about it, but there's some exciting announcements coming out next week actually with some of the stuff we're doing in North America, and various other things there. But yeah, fascinating industry at the moment. It is really interesting.
Great. Rajiv, you are a co-founder and a CTO of a blockchain company, yet you describe yourself as agnostic to blockchain.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So when we started Chainvine way back in 2015, we had a variety of things we wanted to do, but we had to prioritize what we would do. And in one of those discussions, we completely de-scoped the notion that we would create a new blockchain. So coming from an enterprise background rather than coming from a coding background as such, I said there are going to be many blockchains. There's lots of things already happening in this space, and we could foresee that there would be one too many blockchain protocols that would emerge from the same open source paper, and that is held true. So what we decided at that point itself was that we would build an enterprise platform that could integrate with any blockchain that would emerge as dominant, or the few that would pass the test of time, and be able to provide economies a way of working with different technologies and not hedging your bets on just one. So just to give you an example, so say the finance sector decides upon using a particular blockchain, but the finance sector doesn't work on its own. The supply chain sector decides on working with another type of blockchain. Then we would need something that is going to bridge the gap between these two blockchains. So with that in mind, we created a platform that is agnostic to the blockchain technology itself, and our platform can talk to Bitcoin type blockchain or Ethereum type blockchain, public or Ethereum private on a proof of authority type consensus. We can create our own private chain from Hyperledger Fabric code base, and we can distribute that across the world. We are also working with Sawtooth. So our platform and Chainvine as a company, we are not invested in any particular blockchain technology as such. The value that we provide is in the platform that allows you to use blockchain technology.
Great. Final question before I throw open to questions. Vaughan, I asked you earlier about the stakeholders, and you demonstrated why rights holders and performers and artists, as it were keen to get involved because it meant more money. However, there are other actors on that particular play, middlemen, PROs, and other people whose, let's say, your business model might be somewhat challenging to them. What's their reaction to this, to your technology, your platform?
What's their reaction? So I think we're seeing that, right? So I think at the moment PROs are building their own blockchain projects. 3 PROs actually have a project with IBM. What that means is there's, that's great because it means people are testing the technology. Ultimately, it comes down to this. As an industry, do we feel like every single organization or stakeholders will actually build up the competency within their organizations to run a global blockchain platform?
No, they'll use Chainvine.
I mean, this is what it comes down to. I feel like over time, the technology will rest at some part of the industry. Maybe it's something that comes down to the new companies coming in because it requires such specific expertise that it doesn't happen on the incumbent side. And ultimately, I feel that's what we're doing. And I think it comes down to, do we feel like rights holders should become blockchain experts? And if it's yes, then yes, and I think that they'll all run their own infrastructure, and great. But I don't really believe that will happen. I believe that that's going to be something that is outsourced, and it will be one provider or a bunch of providers who provide that technology in, and it'll be great because that's not part of delivering value for artists and writers. That's not part of it. Running databases should be left to people who run databases, and I don't feel like lots of those organizations are interested in becoming database experts. That's kind of the reaction we get. But I think that ultimately it doesn't mean that those companies don't get involved, and we're seeing lots of involvement, lots of discussions. And I tell you what, it's definitely not uniform. In some places we're seeing lots of people have a much more protective stance, and in some places we're seeing people just ridiculously aggressive. They want to be first. They want to get there. They want to understand what would happen if blockchain tips the balance for their industry, and they really want to nail it. They want to figure out what the use case is. They want to build a new business in a new world, and so on. And I think what's really important is in the US, where you have these upstart performing rights organizations. Obviously, they don't have the incumbent, mode already. They're upstarts as well. So they're saying, yeah, let's definitely do it. Let's figure out what it looks like in the future. So yeah. I think that's a diplomatic answer.
Yeah, it's very good. No, but I think that's because there is a sense that people think they're immediately going to be scared and they're going to run away from it.
Yeah.
Whereas actually there are a number of people saying, we've got to grab the tiger by the tail and try and get ahead of things. Got time for a couple of quick questions?
I'm interested to hear the different business models these businesses are working on. Presumably IBM, you're selling services or time or tools, but I'm just interested to the other business models.
So we are very much on our side, we're very much mirroring some of the existing costs, but significantly undercutting them, because at the same time we want to ensure kind of adoption, right? So you can't challenge behavior so much to a certain extent, and we are looking at basically pricing. It's very interesting on our side because we realize that with automation, it's a big leap of faith. You have to no longer count on people who are running manual businesses, and they're people. Yeah, it's bookkeepers and physical a physical person and a mind doing those transactions, and then you just kind of leave it all to a piece of code. A computer. So our business model is undercutting some of the existing fees, the setup fee, the transaction fee, which is really high, but at the same time monetizing a very small percentage from the revenues coming in.
And do you take a transaction fee?
No, we don't have a transaction fee per every transaction. It's just from the top is we're looking at the commission from all the revenues coming in, which is an existing model already kind of embraced by the industry, on top of the setup fee and then individual transaction fees, which at the moment we're currently facing. And it will be interesting to see, right, so how much, I think in the first couple of years probably, as we're building, it will cost us more, so to say. But at the same time, in a couple of years' time, hopefully, just because the whole infrastructure and the whole automation process is in place, then the cost will be like even lower than what they are right now.
One interesting point about commercialization models with blockchain is that it's very hard, because you have a number of participants, and some of those participants, it's crucial that their data is added. Other participants will derive extraordinary amounts of value, and other participants won't. So the value that is derived from a blockchain network is not shared equally. And that obviously needs to be reflected in your commercial model, because there may be some parts of your blockchain that you need to subsidize in order to capture the data that is then shared in other parts. And all sorts of other models. Consortia, founder-led, it's tricky.
Just on that, sorry, I'm really sorry, I think we're running against the clock.
The timepiece has arrived.
Yes, the timepieces presented themselves in the background. So we'll be at the reception as well, so you can grab any of us over a glass of unintelligent wine right now. Apart from what Dr. Rajiv sells as well, so I'm really sorry about that. It would be great to get any questions. If anyone wants to find us afterwards, find everyone on LinkedIn, swap cards, and reach out to find out about this. And I'd just like you to express your thanks and appreciation to Vaughan, Rajiv.